Morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Senate Bill number 39 would create the Kansas Legal Tender Act. The act would make specie coins issued by the U.S. government and any other specie that a court of competent jurisdiction rules to be within state authority to designate as legal tender, to designate that as legal tender in Kansas. Specie means 1, coins having gold or silver content, or 2, refined gold or silver bullion that has been coined, stamped, or imprinted with its weight and purity and valued primarily based on its metal content and not on its form. The bill provides that no specie or legal tender shall be characterized as personal property for taxation or regulation purposes, and provides that the exchange of one form of tender for another and the purchase, sale, or transfer of any form of specie would not give rise to any tax liability, except that these provisions do not apply to taxable distributions from a retirement plan that holds specie. Section 7 of the bill would amend 7932-117 to provide a subtraction modification that would allow taxpayers to subtract any net gain from the sale of specie for purposes of Kansas adjusted gross income, except again, the sale of specie that is a taxable distribution from a retirement plan. No person would have the right to compel another person to tender specie or accept specie as tender unless expressly provided by statute or by contract. The Attorney General would have the authority to enforce the act without prejudice against any private right of action. And the bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book. And I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Amelia. Committee, any questions? Senator Corson.
So I see on section 5, it says that no person shall have the right to compel any other person to tender specie or to accept specie as tender. So does that mean if I'm a merchant or a retailer that I do not have to accept that, and basically I can choose to accept or not accept it? Is that how you read it and how you believe it be applied? Thank you.
Yes, I believe based on that statement, that would be correct, unless there was another statute adopted that would provide for that.
Seeing no others, thank you, Amelia. Our first conferee is Senator Michael Murphy. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Members of the committee, to talk about SB 39. I first brought a bill like this about 4 years ago. I sponsored a bill. This has been changed over the years and modified. I think we're in really nice shape with some of the stuff we've got going now. It seems a little bit odd to talk about silver and gold as legal tender, because for thousands of years that was primarily what was used. And it's just been recent history that paper monies came about. Paper money, of course, came about largely. It's a little easier to carry some bills than it is a bunch of coins in your pocket. And so in the Revolution, they came up with the Continental. And I'm sure you've heard of the phrase, not worth a Continental. Well, it had nothing behind it. All it was a piece of paper with something written on it. And so it really meant nothing. People understood that, and so they refused to take it. During the Civil War, we came out with the greenback, and it had the same problem. One thing that's kind of cool is we've got a history in Kansas with a book and a movie called The Wizard of Oz. And a lot of people don't think about it, but that was written about monetary policy. It was written at the end of the 19th century, and there was a lot of problems with the greenback that had nothing behind it, and people didn't like it. So when you think about the movie, in reality, because it was in Technicolor, the slippers were changed to ruby to look better. But in the book, they were silver. The yellow brick road was gold, and that was the way home. The Emerald City, which was the greenback, had nothing behind it, remember? There was just nothing back there. And so that was the whole idea. There was nothing backing the greenback. So people were wanting to get back to that basis. And of course, when eventually we did go to a metals-based currency, when we had silver and gold basing our paper money, and our coins were actually made out of silver and precious metals, that's when things started to go well financially and with our economic policies. Both gold and silver are highly respected for their ability to hedge against inflation. I looked just before I came in here, I think current gold price is $3,040. A year ago, it was about $2,300. You say, well, that's volatile. What's volatile is our dollar. That's the reason for the change. Our dollar's worth less, so it takes more of them to buy the same amount of gold. SB 39 would remove any tax, because as it is right now, if you buy gold and then sell it, you've got to pay a capital gains as that amount goes up. What's kind of interesting is there's technology now, and I do have an amendment for the bill for when you work it. This is a debit card, MasterCard. It's tied to a depository in Switzerland, and it has gold in it. I load it up, I put any amount I want in there, $5, 5 cents, 5 million, whatever. And whenever I buy gold and put it in the depository, it's at spot price. I take that and I can buy gas, I can buy groceries, I can buy whatever I want with it. And that makes it spendable, which makes it money. And I think that's the key, what we've got here. Three attorneys general have written that they believe that since if you can spend it like money, then it becomes money and it shouldn't be taxed at all. And so that's kind of the way this is going. Historically as well, gold and silver has been something that the wealthy could store away and could kind of hedge against inflation, but the average person cannot. You go down to the coin store or to a pawn shop or whatever like that, and you buy some gold or silver, and you take it home, put it in a shoebox under your bed or a safe or something like that. And then when you need to liquidate it, you've got to go back and through that process again. The nice thing about this is, think about a single mom who could put $25 a week, $25 a month, whatever, in this account. It'll hold its value against inflation. And a year down the road, she needs a tire for her car or a battery or something like that. She doesn't have to go redeem it. She can go purchase what she needs, swipe the card and pay for it. This is the technology that's available today. And so I think this is something that Kansas needs to be a first step. There are other states that have done legal tender, but no state has yet done a transactional legal tender. And I think Kansas should be the first and put us on the yellow brick road to home. Utah just recently, in fact, in the last 2 weeks, I think, passed a bill that allows the state to pay its employees in gold if they want to. So this is something that's happening, and I think we need to get on board. I will stand for questions when it's appropriate.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Klemp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Don't be running off. Thank you, Senator. And a couple questions. I noticed that the Department of Revenue said there's about a $200,000 delta as a result of this Senate Bill 39. Just curious if you know what's driving that. And also, it looks like the general is looking for another headcount to fund this. And I was just curious if your opinion on the 200,000.
You know, it doesn't make a lot of sense because nobody really knows, you know, how much is, you know, there's an awful lot of gold that if you go into a shop and buy gold, pay cash for it, and then go back and sell it 3 months later and make a few bucks. That never gets registered. You know, I don't know how much this is. Maybe something on a large scale. I don't know of any. I don't know how they're able to really track it other than what is actually reported.
Thank you.
Senator Schallenberger.
Thank you, and thank you for introducing this. I've never liked it, but I appreciate you introducing it. I noticed in the back that IRA or retirement accounts cannot use this to their advantage. I'm trying to think of a way to ask is that?
Yeah, that's the way it's written, and to me, it ought to be included as well. But
so people today will put money in an investment account for retirement or for investment account purposes, and they earn dividends or profits, and the stock price goes up, or the commodity price goes up. And when they cash that in, they pay capital gains.
Right.
Same thing with real estate. So why would you, I guess you wouldn't need a retirement account if you had this. You just put your money in gold, assuming the price is going to go up over time, and then cash it in, you pay no tax on your retirement. So you may not be a retirement account, but same thing, isn't it?
Makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And so I think the fiscal note is extremely low on this. I think that the real fiscal note is in millions of dollars, because I think this wipes out people's retirement account. I think I'll just cash my retirement account in, pay the tax on what it is, buy gold, and I never pay tax again.
Well, but if you take it out, you can take a big tax penalty if you take it out early.
You're gonna do that no matter what.
Right.
But,
And so the tax is going to be collected when you take it out.
right. But if I never put it in, if I put it in gold, that's not the case. Okay, thank you.
I just think it's to the people's advantage to be able to do whatever they can to save.
Would be. Yeah, you're right.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next conferee is John Axtell. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Is that it? Thank you. Okay. Honorable Chair and Committee, I'm John Axtell from Wichita, and I'm the volunteer coordinator for the Kansas Campaign for Liberty team. Why is gold and silver so important? Well, first of all, the founders put in the U.S. Constitution in Article 1, Section 10, no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in the payment of debts. So the responsibility for implementing this is with the state. It's with the state legislature right here. Our founders knew the perils of paper currency, and I've given some quotes. One is from George Washington, who says, quote, "Paper money will ruin commerce, oppress the honest, and open the door to every species of fraud and injustice," end quote. And Madison, Hamilton, Jefferson, and others expressed similar sentiments. These may sound extreme, but they're true, they're correct. We've seen the Federal Reserve create a staggering national debt, inflation that has decimated the middle class, boom and bust cycles in real estate and stock markets, and other things such as the government corruption that results from the profligate spending that we see in the federal government. Now, the most important issue among these arguably is our debt. This debt could not occur if we had gold and silver money. Gold and silver money have a special property. It increases in spending power with time. A rational person or government, when you have that kind of money, will hold that money, will save it, will wait to spend it until it has more purchasing power. Our fiat dollar decreases in spending power over time. And so, consequently, a rational person or government will spend it as soon as they can, because to save it means that they'll get less purchasing power out of that. That's a simple economic fact. We know that. That's even more important than the fact that we print copious amounts of money and it's just available for spending. It's even more important than that. And it's this fact that causes the kind of problems we have today. If you'll look at the debt to GDP ratio graph that I put at the end of my written testimony, you'll see that this is true. During the times we had sound money before 1913 and before 1971, especially before 1913, we had a fairly low debt to GDP ratio. But starting in 1913, the debt to GDP ratio was 10%. That was the year that the Federal Reserve was created. And it has never again been as low as 10%. And since 1971, when we went totally off of our fiat, or off of gold and silver, the debt to GDP ratio has literally skyrocketed. So we have this problem, and it's our fiat currency. It decreases in purchasing power over time. And you could say, well, maybe we should just write a balanced budget amendment. But the words on paper do not possess that power that is possessed by gold and silver, that causes rational people and governments to save gold and silver. And we see that right here in Kansas, in our own legislature. I think it was 2017. We have a balanced budget requirement here in the state, but in 2017 or 2018, we passed the largest tax hike in the history of this state in order to balance the budget. And that's because we didn't have gold and silver. So let's talk about the bill real quickly. The bill provides for gold and silver coins minted in this country to be legal tender. It doesn't allow other coins to be legal tender. That's because of a counterfeiting regulation by the federal government pertaining to that. I'd be glad to answer questions on that. It doesn't force any transactions. That means that the IRS can't come at you and say you owe $100 and then demand that you pay that with 100 silver dollars, which would be worth $3,000. That's what we mean by no forced transactions. We don't ban the fiat dollar with this provision. It would be constitutional to do so, but it wouldn't be prudent. This bill is just to provide a choice. And it removes all the taxation from the transactions involving gold and silver. So this bill is a complete, clean bill as it is, and is the basis for the next step, which the senators mentioned, which is full transactional banking in gold and silver. But the fact is, as he pointed out, we already have transactional banking in gold and silver here in Kansas. It is provided by outside vendors, but it provides the service that is needed. And what is necessary right now, what is necessary is to make sure that we make that transactional banking in gold and silver something that does not come with punitive taxes here in Kansas. And we treat gold and silver, which is our only true money, like money. That's what's necessary. So I urge you to vote this bill out of committee with your recommendation for its passage. I'd be glad to stand for any questions you have, and I thank you for your consideration of my message.
Thank you. Senator Schallenberger.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I hate to be the only one asking questions, but thank you for coming. So everything that you described, you can't make somebody take it. It does have value. We know that. So everything that you described, you can do now, except you have to pay tax on it, on the increase.
Yes,
The only thing this bill does is take it off, take the increase, the capital gains, for lack of a better word, off the tax rolls.
and it provides some of the framework that is necessary, such as all transactions are voluntary. And it declares gold and silver legal tender, which actually says it's money and it should be treated as such. So it may provide for protection, in a sense, from other transgressions against gold and silver besides just the taxation.
But those things are already, I mean, if somebody wants to take your gold, they can.
If the federal government came in and stepped in, they'd probably exercise federal overreach and do whatever they wanted. Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee, we have two conferees on WebEx. I'm going to ask that they be brief, and if you have any new information to add. Kevin Freeman.
Yes, Kevin Freeman, thank you very much for the opportunity to address you. My background is an economist. I worked with the Pentagon as the economic warfare expert. I've got a chartered financial analyst designation. And I want to begin with this. Gold and silver are not investments. They are money. And that's an important distinction because Senator Schallenberger has asked about the capital gains taxation. He's even used the term capital gains. And Senator, I would just suggest to you it's immoral to tax money. And when I say it's immoral, I mean if money protects its purchasing power, the state or the federal government should not be earning something off of that. That's a tax on the poorest of us, and it's an unfair tax. Capital gains on investments absolutely should be taxed. If I buy a stock or a piece of property and it goes up in value, I've actually had an increase. But maintaining my purchasing power, and I'll give you an example. 1925, 100 years ago today, a $20 gold coin or a $20 bill. There was 1 ounce of gold in the $20 gold coin, and there was $20 in the Federal Reserve note. Today, that Federal Reserve note will buy about 2% of what it would have purchased back in 1925. Just as an example, the average price of a car would be about $400. You could buy a Model T for $280 in 1925. The average price of a car today, $60,000 would buy that. Well, that is the equivalent value of 20 of those 1 ounce gold coins. But if you have $20 bills, you essentially could buy maybe a couple of tires for that car. Maintaining purchasing power is not a capital gain. This bill is brilliant in how it allows gold and silver to be used as money, not just to protect against the state of Kansas taxing the capital gains, but also the federal government taxing the capital gains. There's an absolute need for it. I put a lot of talking points that are distributed there. I'm just going to focus on one because I was asked to be brief here. And that one is that the more money that we print creates an inflation wealth gap. You've heard the term, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. And that is known as something from economists known as the Cantillon effect. The Cantillon effect was written by Richard Cantillon in 1755 in France when he warned the King of France, if you keep producing this unbacked paper money and just printing it willy-nilly, as they were doing, you're going to create such an inflation gap. The rich get richer because they can profit from inflation, and they do on Wall Street all the time. And as a financial advisor, I can show you 1,000 ways to profit if you have sufficient resources. But the average person is taxed by inflation, and if you terribly. And so it creates this wealth gap that we've experienced. I've written about this in my book, Pirate Money. I've covered it on my television and radio program with my colleague Mike Carter, who is speaking next. But the bottom line is this is a matter of morality for Kansas. I saw the fiscal note that was attached, and it talked about the capital gains that would be lost. About 200,000 was the calculation. It did not in any way deal with all of the commerce and benefit to Kansas it would be if you were first in making gold and silver legal tender currency. I can tell you there's 24 other states working on this right now. In fact, Mike and I leave for Florida shortly. Florida's looking at it, Texas, Oklahoma. Utah's already passed a portion of it. New Hampshire, Kansas has the yellow brick road with silver, and you can take America back to the road of morality, not overtaxing citizens, not creating this massive wealth gap. This is good for average, everyday people. And Kansas, that's what you represent to America. That's why the Wizard of Oz was, I want to get back to real America.
Mr. Freeman,
get back to Kansas.
do you have any new information for us? We are out of time. We've got to work some legislation this year.
Okay, may I?
And we will not have time to work this bill. So,
okay, my apologies. The new information was that gold and silver are money. They are not investments, and I did specifically address Senator Schellenberger's concern about the capital gains. Thank you.
You did. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Freeman. Mr. Carter?
Yes. Thank you. All right, I know we're short on time, and so I'm going to do the best I can to give you just some quick notes so you can get down to business and figure out how to move this thing forward. Why am I here today? This is a $50 trillion bill. It was given to me by someone from Zimbabwe. I sat at a table with him a couple months ago, and he grabbed my arm and he says, "You've got to make this transactional gold and silver legal tender." He goes, "I was living a good life in Zimbabwe. I had a house, I had my car, I had my investments. And we never thought it would happen, but it did. Hyperinflation kicked in overnight. I sold my truck for 2 loaves of bread." He goes, "If I could have had something like this, I could have had some ready money set aside in gold and silver that would have been there in case of an emergency. That would have allowed me to buy groceries for my family at everyday low prices versus this hyperinflationary situation that I was in Zimbabwe." Now, I'm not saying that's ever going to happen in the U.S. We think the dollar is going to continue to be strong for a long period of time. In fact, we think this provides kind of a safety valve to keep the dollar strong, as it gives Americans that rainy day fund of their own to be on their own kind of personal gold currency out there. But this is important. And this is something that appeals to both Republicans and Democrats. We have bipartisan support in 25 states out there. And if I could just address Senator Schoenberger's points. It's on my talking points that's there, but I think it's important. There's 3 reasons why Kansas needs to lead with this. The first one is taxes, or the first one is trust. People trying to buy gold today often don't know where to buy gold. They don't know how to buy it. Oftentimes there's people that put on excess margins and so forth. If the state is behind this, it makes it easy for them to know they're buying quality gold. They're getting it at the best price possible. There's a trust factor that I know that it's going to be vaulted and secure, and that's an easy next step for me. You no longer need to be able to be rich to buy gold. I can buy as little as 10 cents worth of gold. It makes sense for everybody out there. The second one is taxes. If Kansas does it, unlike a private business, this is legal tender. It's functional currency. We believe, according to the IRS code, you will not be taxed on something, because now I can use gold to buy a stick of gum, make a car payment, do taxes. It's actually functional currency, no longer collectible. And third, and maybe most important, is taking. In the 1930s, we saw President Roosevelt take people's money. They took their gold and they repatriated that money, that gold, later on for a profit for the government, but it hurt the citizens. They did not take gold from the states. And we're seeing a coalition of up to 20 some states all looking and saying, all right, how do we make this work in our state? How do we work with other states on that? But if the state gets behind this, we prevent any type of potential federal overreach that exists behind this. We're seeing potentially treasurers talking now about creating a compact of the states. How do they work together? I'm working with 25 states right now. I encourage you to look at the explainer videos. I encourage you to look at some of the talking points we have out there. But I want Kansas to be a part of this and not behind on this thing. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Committee, we have written testimony from Daniel Diaz, proponent. Is there any other proponent? Any opponents? Any neutral? Committee will close the hearing on Senate Bill 39. I'm going to turn your attention to an obscure bill, and you're going to wonder why, but it's 2004. It's I don't think this will take much time, committee. Amelia.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, House Bill number 2004 would provide countywide retailer sales tax authority to Seward County to enable them to have the authority to submit a proposition to their electors to impose a countywide retailer sales tax at the rate of 0.5%, and pledging the revenue received therefrom for the financing the costs of roadway and bridge construction, maintenance, and improvements. And the tax would expire after 10 years, but subsequent elections could reauthorize it for additional 10-year periods.
Committee questions? Seeing none. Committee, what are your wishes on this bill? I don't have any changes to it. If you want, we can add Finney County and the other 2 counties that we passed out. Is that what you'd like to do, or just Senator Peck?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I had looked at this bill as well as a couple others that we had, and we've got some obsolete language in statute that I was hoping to strike, and I had worked with the reviser, and I had it prepared for another bill, but it fits in this one. I don't know if you would want me to offer that.
That would be great.
I understand our reviser may have a balloon that sort of fits this bill. It might have a different number on it.
Exactly. So what I'm going to hand out is actually a markup of another bill, but it included these same statutes. And so it would show these proposed amendments that this senator is talking about. Just ignore the House bill number up in the corner.
Thank you. Senator, do you want to explain your amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If I am reading right, and I'm going to seek some assistance from the reviser of statutes, we'd start, well, no, I don't know where we'd start. Section 3 maybe on page 19? Okay. But this, all this does, committee, pardon me, is just strike obsolete language, that we had authorized, the legislature had authorized some counties to hold elections in the past. Those elections have come and gone. The use for the elections has expired, and I was just cleaning up statutes is really what I was doing. So you've got the balloon there, and you can see what, I apologize for it not being the right bill number, so it's a little hard to track, but that's all it does, is just cleans up some statutes, gets rid of some, reduces the number of words in our statute books.
Amelia?
Madam Chair, yes, the senator is correct. It actually starts on pages 2 and 3 where the stricken material you'll see in those particular paragraphs. That those are older provisions that were validating some elections. So the actual stricken material is on pages 2 and 3. And then there are conforming amendments in the other two statutes that, as the paragraphs are redesignated, we need to redesignate those in the other provisions as well.
Thank you. Senator, do you want to move on your motion?
Yes, I would move that we amend House Bill 2004 with the balloon, but we'll need to give a little bit of latitude for our reviser to make it fit into 2004, which fits nicely. I'm just not sure which pages, but so I would move my amendment.
Thank you, Senator. I'm glad you gave the leeway. It's been moved by Senator Peck, seconded by Senator Owens. Discussion on the motion. Senator Owens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question to ask the senator of the amendment, and that is, where in the world did you find the time to go clean up old statutes? Because I'm missing something.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, being a veteran member, I have learned efficiency with my time compared to some of the freshmen senators.
Ouch. So any other questions on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. Do you want to be recorded? No. Okay, Senator Schallenberger. No, that's fine, Senator. I didn't think you were interested in the bill, so I didn't realize that. Yes, so you don't have a fiscal note on it? I don't. Okay. Okay, so are you making it as a motion? Okay, is there a second? Okay, it's been moved by Senator Schallenberger, seconded by Senator Corson. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're back on the bill. Do you want to, Senator Peck?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would move that we, the Senate Assessment and Taxation Committee, pass House Bill 2004 favorably as amended.
Is there a second on the motion? It's been moved by Senator Peck, seconded by Senator Schallenberger. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Committee, we're going to turn our attention now to Senate Bill 280. And we do have several bills I'm going to try to get through. I don't know if we're going to be able to or not, but hopefully. Amelia, that's okay.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 280 relates to property tax and would require that on and after January 1st of 2026, elector approval for any taxing entity to increase its total amount of property tax to be levied by more than the annual rate of inflation. And the provision would exclude the 20 mil levy and the 1.5 mil state levies.
So just to be clear, inflation, is that referring to the CPI index or a different number?
According to the bill, it is reflected in the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, as reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics of the U.S. Department of Labor.
Thank you, Amelia. Question, Senator Schallenberger. No, that is a House bill that eliminates revenue neutral. This one, yes. Yes, this would be in addition, hopefully we can get our constitutional amendment on the 3% valuation limit, and this would also complement that. Any other questions, Senator? Do you want to? Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
Senator Corson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I worked with Amelia on preparing an amendment for this. I'll let her hand it out and maybe explain it, and then I can offer maybe just a few reasons why I'm offering it. Thank you.
Do you want to explain your amendment?
I'll have Amelia explain it, and then I will give maybe a couple comments on the rationale.
Okay.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the proposed amendment handout that was just provided would amend subsection B to, currently subsection B provides that increased property tax revenues that are produced by new construction are excluded for purposes of this calculation of whether they've exceeded inflation. This proposed amendment would also exclude increased property tax revenues that will be spent on bonds, temporary notes, no-fund warrants, state infrastructure loans, interest payments, payments made to a public building commission, and lease payments.
Senator Corson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Amelia. So I'm bringing this amendment because I had some bond counsel for local governments reach out to me about what they perceive to be some of the problems if we don't have this exception. One of it is a statutory compliance issue. The other is a negative credit impacts. They believe it could cause downgrades or downward pressure on our credit ratings, which would result in higher borrowing costs. Fewer participants in our bond market. I'm glad to go into more detail, but that is the thrust of it. This exception was included in the previous tax lid, and so the thought is that it should also be included here. And again, I think the main reason is if you're not able to levy unlimited ad valorem taxes to repay debt service, we could be looking at credit downgrades or downward pressure on ratings, higher borrowing costs, and just fewer people interested in participating in our bond market. So that's a rationale for why it's being offered. And this language comes from the language that was in the previous tax lid when we were under the tax lid. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. So do you want to make your motion?
Yes, I would move my amendment.
Is there a second on the amendment? Senator Ware. It's been moved by Senator Corson, seconded by Senator Ware. Discussion on the motion. Senator Owen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, so help me understand, and maybe I'm missing something, but my concern here is that if we exempt money spent on bonds, temporary notes, no fund warrants, state infrastructure, I mean, all of these things, that is, in essence, the loophole in the future to exempt them, because then they'll just bond everything. They'll just, do temporary notes or no fund warrants for any increases. And we've kind of lost why this is so important. So help me understand why that wouldn't be the case.
Senator Corson.
Yeah, no, thank you, Madam Chair. I would say this has been in statute previously, and we've not really seen a problem with out-of-control bonding when this was in place. So I think we can look at history and see that that's not been the case. I think that without this language, again, we're looking at third-party rating agencies and other entities, and the entities that would issue this bond just having less interest in Kansas and in providing these bonds. And I think that's going to be bad for our taxpayers, because that's going to lead to higher cost of borrowing and make capital less available to our municipalities. I don't think it will be abused. I think it hasn't been abused previously, but I think it's important to say that we're not going to restrict our ability of a municipality to service their debt, basically. Basically, what we're saying is a municipality should have the ability to fully service their debt. And again, I think without that, we would just see a lot of ill effects in the bond market, would be my rationale.
Thank you. So I understand that previous debt, I would say that you're right. They need to service that. They're encumbered. But new debt and limiting new debt, because I think the problem with the previous tax lid was partially just this, is that there were so many exemptions that were built into that it was simply not effective. And so, I mean, based on what I'm hearing and what I understand, I can't support the amendment because I'm concerned that it creates an exemption and circumvents the intent of the bill. Thank you.
If I could just
Senator Corson.
real quick, Madam Chair. I just think if you look at it from the perspective of an investor, I think you'd be looking at this as essentially increasing the risk that your bonds are not going to be paid back. And so you're going to be demanding a higher return, you're going to be asking for a higher interest rate, or you're just going to say, I'm not going to participate in Kansas bond markets. All of that, I think, results in higher borrowing costs for our municipalities. The number that was given to me that I haven't independently verified, but that was provided to me by folks who work in this industry, or the industry professionals have preliminarily estimated an increase in borrowing costs of 10 to 15%. Because again, we're increasing, by having this lid, we're increasing the risk that the bonds are not going to be paid off. And that's going to increase borrowing costs. Thank you.
Thank you. You've committee, Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would have a question of the maker of the amendment, or the offer of the amendment. This debt would be debt that was voted on, some bonds that was voted on by the citizens, as well as some that was not. Would that be correct?
Senator Corson.
That would be, Mr. Vice Chair, that would be correct.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If it was strictly debt that was voted on by the citizens, I think that would be, I could support this. I'm a lot with Senator Owens on the rest, and I understand, Senator, what you're trying to prove, and I appreciate it, but we've got to try to, my thought, sort of rein in borrowing money unless the citizens voted to bond. That would be my position. So I don't know if there's some way to fix that or change, but again, I appreciate it. I just don't think I'm quite ready to go down this road yet. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay?
No.
Motion fails. We're back on the bill. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I will either offer it now or on the floor. I thought I had asked for a balloon, but I didn't. I was too busy reading obsolete statutes to. But I would like to see us, and if you don't want a conceptual amendment, I'm thinking on line 10, where it says levied by more than 3% or the annual rate of inflation, and then at the end of the sentence, whichever is less. So
Motion is in order.
okay. That's what I would make a motion to add in, and we'll let the revisers figure out exactly where it goes. I think I know where it is, but I don't have a legal mind. to make it to where it's 3%, so it's capped at 3% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Is there a second? It's been moved by Senator Peck, seconded by Senator Owens. Discussion on the motion. It is, and it's taking the CPI index or 3%, and whichever is lower for that year would be the limit that the budget could go to. Otherwise, it would have to go, any increase over that would have to go to a vote of the people. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay? No. Motion carries. We're back on the bill. Further discussion. Senator Klemp, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a few issues with 280, and I've voiced my concerns to Senator Owens, so it shouldn't be new. But I have concern there's a little bit of confusion with the revenue neutral and how it impacts elections. I also feel that the rate of inflation is a concern. I appreciate the 3% or whichever is lower, and I'll put it out there. I think the pinching locals at this point in time, when we have increased transparency on their decision making through the 2 different 1603 on the resolution side, and I feel like we're a session early in this process. We've done some things to provide all of this additional transparency on the decisions that locals are making, and at the same time we're going to pinch them. And I don't mind the pinch at some point. I feel like if it continues to be out of control, creating the pain from property tax, which is why one of the big issues that we ran on, I feel like they will have earned that pinch at some point. I just think we're a session early. So I will be voting no on this.
Thank you, Senator. Any other? Senator Schallenberger.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I recall when we had the hearing on this now that there was some concern I had about getting an election in this whole thing to occur. And I thought we'd talk to a revisor or somebody about, can it be done? Is the timetable there?
We did talk to the revisor, and the revisor is prepared to answer that.
Okay.
So thank you, Amir. Or Eddie is, sorry, both are.
So what we had discussed I think it was during the hearing on this bill was checking in on how this had been done in the past. The tax lid law that was in place from 2016 to 2021, in addition to saying that the election was to be held in the manner prescribed by KSA 10-120, it actually specified specific options for that election to be held. And one of those was held at the next regularly scheduled election in either August or November. Another was that it may be a mail ballot election conducted in accordance with, it made reference to KSA 25-431. And then it further specified that it may be a special election called by the city or county. And then further clarified that nothing in the subsection prevents any city or county from holding multiple special elections in any one year, and required whichever taxing entity was requesting the election to be responsible for paying the costs of the election. So the previous tax lid law did provide a bit more specificity as it related to the election options than this one does as written.
That answer your question? No, that raises your concern.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so too.
So the city, let's use the city's example. They're doing their budget in August. I mean, I'm trying to recall, but I think we did it in the fall. We start working on the budget, and then we decide that the budget is going to be more than 3%. That amendment went on, even though the rate of inflation is 6%. Now we have to have an election before we can set the mill levy. Is that before we can do that? And so how much notice do we have to give of an election?
I thought there was 45 days, but thank you, Eddie. He's going to double check. Yeah, there are some logistics with the election, the notification, the budget process.
I thought, I'm remembering that.
Senator Starnes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions other than just to point out, since '97 for my district, the Riley County area, that we're above 300% in tax increases with unencumbered reserves of $10 billion.
10 billion? Any other questions or discussion? Senator Owen.
Madam Chair, so I'm curious that at this point, in just a piece of discussion, if we know that election process as it existed in the previous tax lid, if an amendment to add that piece to this bill would be appropriate and would allay the concerns of some of the members of the committee.
Amelia, I'm sure. So we would allow a conceptual amendment. I'm not sure it does alleviate all the concerns because of the logistics, and we do have a couple of bills. You may not be aware of them. One of them passed out of Fed and State, and another came to us from a House bill that would restrict financial elections on August, November, or April elections. So that would create another complexity in this, that there would be no special elections. So while I appreciate the efforts on this, I do, if the committee wouldn't mind, I would appreciate an interim study on it and that we could move on it next year. Or if you want to try moving on it this year, we can absolutely go for it. It's whatever the committee wishes. Discussion, Senator Owens.
Certainly, I still personally believe that this is important enough that we need to have a position. I know that the House has a position, and I believe we're possibly going to work the House bill here in a second, and I have some thoughts on that too. But recognizing that some of these issues can be worked out in conference in terms of the election, also recognizing that some of those bills that are moving through the process may not even become law or have an impact.
So a conceptual is in order. If you want to make the motion, please do.
So I would make a conceptual amendment that we add the voting language as previously established in the previous tax lid to Senate Bill 280.
So, Senator, it does have a conflict with the legislation that we passed, allowing their budgets not to be due until October 1st. That was part of the reason that we hadn't changed that in the revenue neutral, was we were waiting to see how that system worked. That language may have to be negated, but we will go for the conceptual amendment. Is there a second on the amendment? Okay, it's been moved by Senator Owen, seconded by Senator Schallenberger. Discussion on the amendment. Does everybody understand? It is a conceptual amendment to use the language for elections that were in the previous lid that was sunset in 2021. That's the language you're talking about, right? Eddie?
Can you restate the question? Amelia and I were conferring on where I had pulled that language when you made that.
That it was the election requirement in the 2021 lid that was repealed.
So this is the election kind of timing of it. And it was codified in 79, 29, 25C.
Okay, so any further discussion on the motion? Senator Corsi.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I appreciate the intent of this, but I'm going to be a no because I can't vote yes on something that I haven't read, haven't seen, we haven't had a hearing on, we haven't vetted it. I know it was in the previous tax lid, but I don't feel, I'm going to err on the side of voting no because I don't feel like I have enough information to cast an educated yes vote, and that's what I would urge the committee to do. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay? No. Motion fails. Division, all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion fails on a tie. So we're back on the bill. Discussion. We are about out of time, committee, and I do want to work 2396. So Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would move that the Senate Assessment and Taxation Committee pass Senate Bill 280 as amended favorable.
It's been moved by Senator Peck, seconded by Senator Owens. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. No. Chair is in doubt. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Tie. Motion fails. I think that it is a good piece of legislation. I just agree with the comments that it may be a year too soon. Committee, I'll turn our attention to, does anybody have a committee after this one? I know I do. Judiciary, okay. Do you want to keep working, committee? Okay, great. 2396. And then committee, I'm not sure we're going to have time for this. I do have one amendment for it. We heard the bill yesterday. Does anybody need an overview on it? It's the House bill. Nobody's requesting an overview. Committee, I am going to make a motion to strike the striking language for the revenue neutral, basically leave revenue neutral in this piece of legislation. Is there a second on the motion? It's been moved by Senator Tyson, seconded by Senator Peck. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're back on the bill. Committee, there's a lot of work that needs to be on this bill. Senator Owens, would you like to make a motion to put your language in?
I would, Madam Chair, if we could get that amendment passed out. And while that is being passed out, I will say this is, for what it's worth, kind of my attempt at compromise language with the House. In my opinion, there are parts of this that I really like, and there are parts that I don't. And so as the amendment, making sure that's on, as the amendment is being passed out, I will share conceptually, and then I'll have Amelia fix it if that's okay, or correct me. Well, now maybe I just need to eat the microphone, apparently. So this bill does a couple of things. One, it does keep, very similar to 280, before the amendment, the tax lid being at inflation. What then it does do is it eliminates the Astra fund, because I just don't think that carrot is near large enough to actually be effective. It does keep in the protest petition approach, but it's a modified protest petition. And being as that we left revenue neutral in there, there's going to be a little conflict, because my approach was to turn the revenue neutral statement into a protest petition statement that still provided all of the same information as the revenue neutral, so that people understood, well, similar to revenue neutral, people understood what the increase was, but it made it very specific to each individual taxpayer and owner of property where to go to sign that petition, how to access it, and provided a phone number so that individuals could, if they don't have the ability to go sign it, one could be mailed to them. And so, again, it is similar, keeps the lid at inflation, but then uses a modified protest petition approach to notify people of their option to go sign that protest petition.
So, Senator, I don't see a conflict. Would you make that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Is there a second on the motion? Okay, it's been moved by Senator Owens, seconded by Senator Peck. Discussion on the motion. Senator, I do not see that as a conflict with revenue neutral. I think they're two separate entities, so I think this is fine. I would also ask that if we move on this, that you would entertain the 3% or lower. Okay, after we dispose of this motion. Any other discussion? Senator Schallenberger.
So this is the last bill. This is the House bill, but there's not an election, there's a protest petition. So we've eliminated that problem. We've taken out the Astra Fund, which I didn't like to start with. What else? Is that it?
Amelia?
Okay, according to my notes, here's where we're at. The, the bill, the House bill, as you heard about it yesterday, included the protest petition if they went above the CPI plus some other things. It also included the Astra Fund of $60 million per year to be distributed. The chair's amendment, and it would have repealed the revenue neutral rate provisions that are currently in law. The chair's amendment, which passed, would leave those revenue neutral rate provisions alone, so they would not be repealed. And then we have Senator Owen's current handout before you, motion that would strike the Astra Fund provisions. So there would be no distribution of $60 million. And then it would also add a notice to taxpayers of the protest petition for those that would have it, and then also include establishing a protest petition notification costs fund, so the state would reimburse those costs for 2 years.
Any questions, committee? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're back on the bill. Senator Owens, would you entertain Senator Peck's motion? Do you want to move on 3% or lower? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Conceptually, I would move that we add in the cap of 3% or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower.
It's been moved by Senator Peck, seconded by Senator Owens. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Would you like to be recorded? Okay. So, committee, I'm going to make another motion to include the revenue neutral language changes that we put in our bill, or the House bill that we passed out. And I'm going to include totals on that. We didn't put totals, and one of my county commissioners is very adamant that we include those on it, the revenue neutral letter. Any question? It's been moved by Senator Tyson, seconded by Senator Schallenberger. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. No. Do you like to be recorded? We're back on the bill. Committee, what are your wishes? Senator Clem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for educational purposes, this will push it into conference. Will this, on this
It's
bill?
always dangerous to hope that, because the House could actually concur on it. So you want to make it as good as possible. But yes, it will be conferenceable if it passes.
The Senate.
Well, actually, it's conferenceable. After, the House bill is. The House bill part is, yeah. Hopefully, we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I'm just very cautious about moving things to the next phase. Senator Schallenberger. That's true. I got ahead of myself. Absolutely. Yeah. So, but keep it in mind. Senator Owen.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion, if it's the appropriate time, to pass House Bill 2396 as amended favorably.
Should we make it a Senate substitute bill to allow the revisers? Do you mind? Thank you.
That's a great idea.
Thank you. Senator Owens has made the motion. Is there a second? Senator Peck. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion seems to carry. Okay, thank you, committee. I'm going to turn our attention to Senate Bill 39. I know we just had the hearing today. Does anybody have objection to working that today? Seeing none, I don't think we need to know. Is there an objection to no overview? Seeing none, thank you. Committee, what are your wishes on the bill? Any motion? No. Senator Starnes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move forward with the bill as presented
Okay. Do you want to move it out?
favorably.
You want to move it out of committee favorably for passage? Okay. It's been moved. Is there a second? Senator Owens. It's been moved by Senator Starnes, seconded by Senator Owens. Discussion on the motion. Senator Shalom.
Well, I guess I'm tilting the windmills here, it looks like, but I'm not like this since it started. I will say it's better than it was a few years ago, but it's a great bill if you sell gold. You know, I have a coin collection that isn't gold or silver, but I'll have to pay capital gains if I sell that. I've got, you know, you can have jewelry, used to be used as currency years before gold and silver was. Jewels were, you pay capital gains on that. You have a painting, you pay capital gains on that, and we're exempting one thing. And I think there will be a lot of people that will invest in gold, and I sure don't blame them for it. I've done it, I've got some. But it's a commodity, really, and making it a legal tender, I think, is a stretch. But I have a feeling I may be the only one that thinks that. Thank you.
You may not be the only one, but committee, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Say aye. All those opposed, nay? Would you like to be recorded? No. Motion carries. Committee, I would like to work 283, but we are definitely out of time. I appreciate your work. I want to thank Amelia, reviser, Eddie, research, Eric, research, John, Pam, and committee for all of your work this session. I will be requesting some interim committees. We have a lot of work to do and study before us, but I do think we made some good progress for being our first year. I'd like to thank the vice chairman and the ranking. It's been a pleasure working with you guys, and I look forward to working with you on conference committees. So thank you. Thank you, committee.